It should. It might just take a second here.
Okay. Oh yeah, this is another big
We're
part of
back.
it. Another part about the stream is we will want to be streaming this game more often. It's something that's going to be important to certain festivals that we become part of. And again, we want to work out a lot of the bugs. So a lot of anybody has any comments on how to make this a better stream, not just a better game, that would be super helpful too.
Yeah, what
This
were
is a bit of a dry run, so
suggestions you want to see? Definitely let us know. Tetris Monster asks, will this release on PS5?
oh, I would not on launch because we haven't started working with Sony yet. But the PS5 is apparently accessible hardware. I've been told this by people in the blind community who know this a lot better than I do. So I think it might be an obvious thing for us to reach out. A couple of years ago, we had considered going to Sony, and then Xbox ended up helping us fund an Xbox One version of this game. So that is why we are coming out on the Xbox One and or pardon me, the PC. However, it's not exclusive or anything, so we certainly could do that, and hopefully it'll be a good home for this game because of the accessibility of the hardware itself.
Yeah,
Um,
so right now it's slated to come out on PC and Xbox. I definitely know the naming conventions of Microsoft consoles. Xbox One,
One,
what
you got
letters?
it. Yeah.
One S? Eh? One E?
Oh, don't
Oh
don't
wow,
do this to
this is
yourself.
embarrassing.
Don't do them.
It's not my it's
Just
not
say
mine of
one.
choice, you know.
Just say one and not the newest one. Um,
Um,
Although that actually, I don't. That might happen too on launch.
Sup, Michael Hoffman 76. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, so yeah, that was the other part or thing we're doing here is kind of working out the bugs on how to stream. The other big question is, and I will start showing parts of the game very shortly, but how do you stream a game without visuals? That's a big question. This is more of a development stream, so we can talk about stuff under the hood and things that have visual content. And then
Yeah, maybe
also,
we'll.
sorry, go ahead, Jamie.
I think maybe we'll need to make like a button that pops up on the screen for everybody to put their headphones on if they don't.
Oh yeah, that would be a good idea because for the binaural audio, for you to be able to hear what's going on, you probably should be wearing headphones. It'll be highly recommended when you start playing the game,
Yeah,
so you'll
so
be
if you're
hearing.
not wearing headphones, maybe go grab a pair. Any pair of headphones will do, as long as they're stereo headphones.
Mhm.
Um, and you'll be able to enjoy this stream a lot more once we start showing off some gameplay and getting into the nitty gritty. Hello, Werner Katz. Nice for you to be here. Thanks for coming.
And the other thing I want to figure out too is learn a little bit about how to stream for potentially two communities: the sighted community and the blind community. Because obviously I'm going to be talking about visuals a lot potentially, even though, sorry, let me back up. There's no visuals in the game, but in doing a development stream, there might be references to things that are on screen, and then just sort of how to navigate um, the, sort of the way we talk about visual experiences. Again, luckily this game has it is all basically contained within an audio experience, so that shouldn't be an issue. But again, I feel like
Yeah,
there'll be comments and things that'll come up as we
if
do
there are
this.
any suggestions anybody has for how to make our stream more accessible or more accessibility friendly, definitely let us know. X Vorden, thanks for being here, says your compatriot sounds pretty far away. Do they have their microphone at hand? Oh, we don't have title cards for us. Probably would have been smart. We'll put
Mm-hmm.
that in notes for the next stream. That's David Evans on the left, the game director, and I'm Jamie Robaz, the producer. So who sounds far away? We
I think
can
it's
both
me.
adjust our mics.
Yeah, let me see if I can fix that. That is something. Wonder if that is in if it's an OBS. Is that in
That would
OBS
be an
setting?
OBS, yeah.
Audio. Let's see here. Um,
Tetris Monster. So this is not slated to release on PS5 right away. We don't have that lined up, but we definitely love to look into that possibility after launch. Uh, it's Dave who sounds far away. So you,
Oh, I
you
know what I've been doing. I was recording audio 2 weeks ago, and I did these settings I believe, in Windows, because I was trying to balance the headset audio with the playback audio for the actors. And
Gotcha.
these are all the perils of doing stuff in studio remotely. I had never done this before, so this will take me a moment. But I feel like I'm capable of doing this.
Okay, well,
Let's
we'll
see.
get there.
See what happens. Ooh, master volume. That sounds important. Input device. There's the device. I also have, that's another big question. We can have people vote if I should use my fancy microphone for recording. It looks cooler, but this is just a lot easier. Let's see. Device properties. Oh, it's up there. It's not pretty good.
Are you checking in Windows or in
Yeah, I
OBS?
was checking in Windows. OBS, I didn't see any volume controls yet, but it seems like everything's a max. Oh wait, I see. There's the mic audio auxiliary. Hmm. Let's see here. I'll try one more thing. This is good. This is all really good to know. Let's see. All right, so master volume input.
This is the fun of the first stream. Watch us fumble a little bit. Oh, Werner's played all of the Veil demos and thinks they are nice. Well, there is, and the title still hasn't changed. Hey, that's a good point. It didn't change.
Oh, it still says test stream.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that was an OBS. I did change it here, but
Testing. Yeah, it is a little low. I can see it on my input here. This must be an OBS thing. So let me figure this out. Properties maybe. Device default. No, not there.
okay. Tetris Monster. I think I changed the title now. Let me know if that doesn't work. See, we're just like you. Unless you're really good at this, in which case we're not like you yet. So there are, you can put in a audio filter, but you should probably look at the audio levels. I think in the bottom right in the audio mixer in Streamlabs, it
Yeah,
shows your different levels, and there should be a gear icon to the right of
yeah. I'm
the
looking at
volume
that.
button.
What would I select here?
What's there when you click on that
Oh,
gear icon?
it just brings up a window. It says, oh, filters, performance mode, remove, rename,
You can put
properties.
if you go to filters, you can put a gain filter
Yeah, let's
in.
try that. Filters, plus, gain. Oh, there's the first choice. Filter. Let's try that. Done. And then I can. How's that? Did that do something? I don't know if it comes across right away.
Let us know out
Oh wait,
there.
let me.
Stream
Oh no, I
chat.
can see. I can see it. I can actually feel it a little bit. It's getting a little crunchy. Oh, that's a bit better. Um, yeah, I'm in the yellow. I'm very close to the red though now. So gain filter did something.
All right. Well,
I
hopefully.
went a little crazy with that. I think. All right, there we go. I think we're getting better values
Cool.
now.
Uh, Thanks for joining. Looks like a few more people trickling in. Um, and
So let me find a scene.
yeah,
Let's go to the. Let's see. So I'm in the editor. I'm not using a build. I can go anywhere in the game if I should choose. No, let's go. Let's go to the. So I'm probably going to launch into a
uh,
section of the game. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jamie. You were saying?
Tetris Monster wants to know if the combat has changed at all. That I guess depends on one. The answer is definitely yes. But two, I guess it depends on the last demo that you would have played. Probably had the Raiders, I think, right? But that would have been before we had other weapons in.
Yeah, we had a demo on itch.io that had a tutorial slash demo section where you could jump to other parts of the game that had more difficult combat, some magic. If you did end up playing that, the combat, it's more of a balancing change more than anything else. What we're currently trying to do, and what I was going to talk about today, because this is in progress, is trying to make heavy attacks more meaningful. They were not balanced in the last demo. They were just kind of put in as an example of how you could do heavy attacks by pulling back on the stick or pushing down on the I think it's oh gosh, no, I can't remember. I'll remember on the keyboard, probably arrow back to charge up an attack and push forward. But the risk when fighting multiple enemies to charging up was not really worth the reward of the additional damage or chance to crit. So we've made an adjustment to make that much more effective. But it still has its uses. If you're surrounded by a lot of enemies, heavy attack becomes less it becomes a little too risky. And as soon as you're dealing with one or two enemies at a time, it becomes a viable option.
Yeah, just to
Yeah,
cut you off for a second,
yeah.
X Warden says it still sounds like OBS isn't picking up from your personal microphone. It sounds like you're being picked up by your laptop mic rather than a closer source, but you are audible now and able to be understood. So
All right,
that's
that's
good.
interesting.
Thanks for the follow, NS Studios. Uh, and for the rest of you who followed when we started up and I didn't have the time to shout out, thanks for that too.
Performance. Man. Now I want to solve this
Yeah,
mystery.
so while Dave tools around with his microphone settings, I'll elaborate a little bit. So the Veil has, we have a
There
few different weapons or weapon types that you can get in the game.
Is
So
that
you
better?
have,
Oh my god, that's way too hot now because of the gain filter I put on. Okay, now be very quiet as I
thanks
change
PS
this.
Cross 32, appreciate the follow.
That was very
Um,
helpful.
and as Dave turns us into an ASMR stream, X Warden says there he is. That sounds a lot better, I
Okay.
guess. Yeah, so you have your sword and shield. You have your larger or heavier weapons. There's Warhammer, which does blunt damage. There's oh, I don't want to get the name wrong. I don't want to just say axe, but it's an
A battle
axe.
axe. It's a battle
Battle
axe.
axe.
How?
Thank you.
Oh gosh, how does it sound now? This is good. If everybody
Let
wants to
us
just
know, stream, how it's going
give
if
me
you
a
need
thought
more
on that,
audio adjustments.
or if you want me to pull
Um,
that down.
and the way that we thought about implementing these weapons is that, yeah, it says that's very good,
Nice.
is that they would encourage different play styles for how you want to approach combat. So, kind of the all around play style is the one that you're given by default with your sword and shield. Um, your heavier weapons should be doing more damage but inhibit your movement or your options. So you'll swing slower or they'll take up more stamina. But where we ended up a short while ago was that the risk reward for using the heavy weapons was too risky and not as rewarding. So a lot of the later combat scenarios see you surrounded by groups of enemies, and even if you were able to charge up a heavy attack and get it off, it would still often leave you vulnerable when you're playing on the harder difficulties. So we're working at making adjustments to kind of fine tune the risk and reward for the different play styles
Actually,
with the weapons that you have.
one thing, and we'll run it today, is the raider attack. I've actually set it up so you only get surrounded by two of the raiders at a time, which does allow you to. There's just a little less overlap in attack, which seemed, at least for me, playing on a hard setting, I found it easier in a way that felt satisfying. So that's something, and we'll get to see if I can get through it because it is meant to be very hard. The hard level is meant to be sort of a perfectionist sort of type, fairly hardcore scenario, and the normal setting of difficulty is meant to be not casual. It's still meant to have some challenge. And if you really want a casual experience and kind of hack away, you play on easy, which really makes it kind of like a story mode. At least in theory, it should. Also,
There's
the
more
someone asked
straightforward.
about pets as well. There is a pet in the game, a dog that you can find, and it's an optional thing. But the game's really started to focus around being very narrative driven, more like a Naughty Dog type experience. So there's certain aspects of RPG which we're kind of talking about now, but it's relatively light on that. We really focused around the story and the experience and the characters and that sort of thing. But it's sort of my intention to eventually have broader RPG type titles in all audio after this one, just to set expectations for what this game is too. Because it's sometimes unclear when you start playing a game that gives you a certain amount of freedom and allows you to buy items and things like that, as to how deep that ends up going. And it's definitely a more story focused, slightly more linear experience with a certain amount of branching choice in certain
Yes.
scenarios. And
So
completionist type choice. Like you don't have to do all the quests, but there's a lot of opportunity to do a lot of quests. But I don't know, about half of them maybe, maybe a little more than half are required to gate progression. All right, so should I
so
drop into
there's
the? Sorry, Jamie, go ahead.
I was just saying, yeah, so like there's no pet system,
No,
at least in this game, but there is a pet. There's a dog, and you can pet it. Unless you're asking about our pets in the background, you might hear Dave's, what is it a budgie?
it's a budgie
Dave has a budgie,
and a
and
dog
I've got
somewhere.
a menagerie. My cat Azula is wandering in the background of the stream, I think. She's gone now. Um,
So
Yeah,
should I
so
jump into the village, Jamie?
let's
Well,
jump into. You want to jump into the village, or you want to jump into combat?
oh, I guess I could. Yeah, I guess we were talking about combat. Let's jump into combat. I was going to do the
I'll.
village first because we also made some adjustments to the way the game plays movement wise. And I wanted to go over that. That's the biggest change we've probably put in, and I think it's a resounding successful change, but a resoundingly successful change. But yeah, let's jump to the Raiders. I'm going to play with
Uh,
magic on. I'm gonna what do you
oh,
call
and
it?
that changed in the combat. I don't think the. Oh no, did the Raider demo? I think the Raider demo had magic, but we just didn't mention it. I feel like
Oh,
maybe it
yeah.
was.
I have to if I play the demo version, it'll automatically have magic.
No, I'm
Um,
just thinking because Tetris Monster asked if the combat changed at all, and
oh,
now you're
right.
doing combat with
Yeah,
magic,
the
right?
Raider demo in the itch.io build had was I think called Magic Demo actually.
Yeah.
I know it as the Raider demo because under the hood, that's all I care about is these Raiders that are really
So
hard.
before we start the combat, can we go through the menus in the game and just check out the equipment from there?
Oh, I guess I can. Yeah, I can
That
do
would
that.
be nice just to give people an overview of what's what.
Yeah,
If you don't have your headphones in, now is definitely the time where you want to get headphoned up.
I wonder if I should play. It might force me. Let me see if I can play in the. Uh, I don't know if I have to do path choice first. Well, let's try the ridge. I think is where you run into the raiders, and if you choose this is a branching choice in the game, and if you do the stay on the road, you fight warriors. So it's a slightly different combat scenario. Let's see what this sounds like. I could also play in the demo, which I know works a certain way.
Oh, I just realized I won't be able to hear this from your end.
Oh, really?
Right? Because I'm not listening to the stream because there would be latency.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not sure I can stand much
I
more of
I
this.
can
There
hear
should be a
you
place to
because
shelter
we're
just around this
chatting. I
outcrop
guess
ahead.
you could
I smell
share
smoke.
your.
Campfire.
Someone
No, I
must
don't know if
already
that would
be
work
there.
either. Hmm. I'll
Oh,
think about this.
the
All right.
clansmen again.
Mara. And they're coming this way.
Use your fire.
Oh, I know what's wrong. Hang on 1 second. I switched the defines to ship to make a build this morning, so I'll have to clear
You
that.
switched what?
The defines, it basically under the hood stuff that sets up builds for being shippable, where I remove all the debug. All my debug commands are gone all of a sudden. It's because I had the defines set to be ship builds, which gets rid of all your fun
This is the
hotkeys.
nitty gritty that people are here for.
Is that what it is?
Maybe,
Watching me.
possibly.
Actually, one thing, if for those in the sighted community, you can keep an eye on the right of the screen. You can actually see the combat scenario, and this is what the game looks like under the hood. It's a lot of squares and circles attacking people.
Yeah,
Um,
it looks like a grid, and the player's on the center point of the grid, and you can see squares like to the top, left, and right of the player to represent where the enemies are, where their audio is
yeah, here we go.
originating
So
from.
this is where the green things here in this scenario are waypoints, and then this is what an enemy looks like. Looks like a sphere with a little square head So that's audio coming from the head and the middle section and the feet. So you actually get spatial sound when they're running and stuff. And then they've
So
got
there's
their weapons and stuff.
every enemy in the game then has 3 points of audio, one for their feet, one for their the middle, for all that middle audio that you make as a human being, and your head. Is that right?
That is right, and the sword itself in some enemies moves around, and you can hear it move as it swings through the air. Most enemies attack straight at you, but there's some that have side swipes where you'll hear the sounds pass from right to left as it comes across your body. Okay, let's try this again. Minute play. I'm sorry you can't hear this, Jamie. We'll have to
That's
figure
okay.
that
I'll
one
figure
out.
that out.
Okay.
I'm not sure I can stand much more of this.
There should be a place to shelter just around this outcrop ahead.
I smell smoke. Campfire.
Someone must already be there.
Oh, hell. The clansmen again.
Mara, and they're coming this way.
Use your fire. It may scare them off. This is as good a time as any to put your new powers to use, Princess.
Game
Okay.
options menu.
Oh.
Game. Check quit game and return to main menu. Press the right trigger to select an option. Use the left stick to cycle through options.
Okay.
What are you
Resume
owing?
game. Press
Oh,
the right
right.
trigger to
Hang on.
select an option. Use the left stick to cycle through options.
First of all, I realize I gotta get rid of one of my objects is visible and it shouldn't be. But sorry, Jamie, you wanted me to go through the inventory. That's what I'm doing here. I actually hit the wrong button though. So give me 1 second.
Remember,
Character
There we go.
menu.
Bacon,
Push down on the left stick to
definitely
cycle
giving
menu
you some
options.
love, saying they love the variety of accents used within the game. Dave is I'm trying to think of a word that's nicer than picky. Particular, specific. Dave has a really good attention for detail with regards to accents, both in terms of like when writing the game and building out the world. All of his notes, detailed what kinds of accents would be used
Equipment.
from people
Press the
of
right
different
trigger to
places in
select an
the
option.
game world. And
Use
then
the
in
left stick
particular,
to cycle through
Dave also
options.
did all the voiceover direction, as he has a lot of experience with that. While I wasn't there myself, I feel like you probably do a pretty good job in that. You want to talk any more about accents for the game?
No, other than we went to England to get the English accents that I felt I couldn't get in Canada. We have a decent, quite a decent pool of actors in Toronto, working out of Toronto, but it wasn't quite there to cover everything. And I also wanted to make sure I included some visually impaired actors in the cast. So I kind of threw a wider net, and I have some people from the States. And a group in England to fill out the English accents. And Toronto was a lot easier to find the Middle Eastern, South Asian, and accents. You will hear a couple people putting on French accents and stuff. I in a low budget or indie game, you can only go so far, but I do get a lot of feedback from people who are from these different regions as to what sounds right. I think the English ones are generally solid, and certainly the Middle Eastern ones are solid in just the casting. And again, somebody from France is probably not going to be happy at least one of the accents. But I think it doesn't take you out of the game experience, at least.
No, it's pretty. It's well done and well intended. Blind Sight wants to know, will Xbox get a beta? I don't know what that means.
Probably beta.
Oh, a beta.
Like a beta for Xbox.
There was one a long time ago when they had a like summer. I think it was last summer.
Yeah, it was.
They did a limited time festival.
Yeah, it was a development demo that was on for a certain amount of time, and it was a straight up demo. It wouldn't be any different from that. There would be no full betas or anything on Xbox. The game will just launch with potentially with a demo.
I think at this point, because it's probably so close to being done, it probably not.
Hey, Jamie, because this is audio, I don't really know how to do this part, because I think if I drop the desktop audio, it brings your audio down. Is that correct, do you think?
If you drop the desktop audio, will it bring
Yeah,
me down?
I'm pretty
Oh,
sure
yeah,
it will,
probably.
because I'm
Yeah.
trying to basically you're competing with audio you can't hear because the menus are fully voiced. So as I go through the items, and we can't hear you talking.
Oh,
So if you
okay.
want me to go through the items and see what's equipped, and I can also play with the debug commands to change the items. If this is something you wanted me to do, Jamie, I'm
I just think I want people to understand that like these are the menus for the game. Here's like how you
sure.
would look for your items, and then it brings more context to the combat that we're about to show off to just describe like, hey, these are the items. This is
Okay.
the general idea that you should have of playing this character with these
Okay.
items.
So this is gonna fire off a lot of audio here.
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, except for the fact I lost mouse focus.
Magic equipment. Use left stick to cycle equipment. Quality arming sword.
Oh, I gotta
Press
fix
right
that.
trigger to review item stats.
Okay, so what do I have here? I got a stupid box I got to get rid of. I should make notes about bugs. But so right now I have, I think this is the top. Yeah, this is the top tier items I've sort of equipped with a hotkey. So I have the best sword you can get in the game. I have the highest level plate armor. Plate's heavier, noisier. So it has some reductions in several speed. The speed of your swing is actually reduced very slightly when you're wearing heavier armor. And for a twitchy game like this, that actually there's a feel element to that that's kind of important. You also make a lot more noise when you're sneaking around a campsite or hunting in the plate armor. And what else? We got to.
Let's look at
Sorry.
the stats for the items. And
Oh,
Jerky Bacon says,
yeah,
as
yeah.
someone from Britain, many of the accents feel very genuine and accurate. So
Oh, thank
compared to
goodness.
those accents, you've done a fabulous job.
Oh, thank you. All right,
Thanks,
I'm going to
Jerky.
listen to the arming sword. This will all be. You'll see it on screen, but we're gonna have to listen to a whole thing too.
Use left stick to cycle item stats. Left trigger to return to equipment. Item quality. Tier 5 sword.
So that's
Press
just
the right trigger to select this option.
Oh,
Use left stick to cycle options.
that shouldn't
Press
play.
left trigger to return to previous menu.
There's nothing to select here. That's probably left over from actual the shop. Anyway, so yeah, you get a general idea of the tier of your item, so you can compare when purchasing. I don't allow you to buy a item lower than the one you have. So it's the way the game is set up. You'll never be wanting to buy have the option to buy a tier 2 sword when you already have a tier 5 sword. However, I think there's one point in the game at which you could have I think a tier 3 sword and buy a tier 3 blunt weapon if you want to kind of switch up the nature of the weapon you have. So what do we have
Critical
here?
chance
We have
bonus.
a critical chance bonus.
40%. Press the right trigger to select this option.
Oh man.
Use left stick to cycle options.
Okay.
Press left trigger to return to previous menu.
I'm just going to read them myself. I can't go through all this because there's a bug where it plays selection audio after every single stat that gets played.
Yeah.
So the crit chance bonus and the heavy attack crit chance bonus. So for an edged weapon, you can see there's only a 20% increase in crit chance. On any kind of blunt weapon, when you're swinging harder, there's a huge difference. So if you're equipped with a heavy weapon, it's more suited to doing heavy attacks. So you'll double your chance of critting. And this game is set up that the crit multiplier is almost always 3 and sometimes 4 times the damage. So really the main qualifier in how much damage you're going to do is this critical chance. It's the main number you care about when you're dealing damage because it changes the nature of the damage so drastically. And the reason we did that too is that a game that's reduced down to audio calls, we thought it was the best way to be able to hear the difference in the quality or the ability of your character and your weapon, because there is a sound difference between a critical hit and a regular hit, which is quite drastic. You'll hear a little sort of annoyed ugh if you hit someone and it's not a crit. And then you hear them screaming in pain, and you'll hear a different sound of the impact of the weapon when you crit. So in a higher quality weapon against, let's say, light armor, you will hear this sort of yelling and screaming every single time you make impact with a good weapon. And it'll die a lot quicker, obviously, as well. And I felt that was the most dramatic way to sort of get that across in all audio, rather than having a minor stat buffs that would be very hard to show in audio, or to display in audio in some way. So that was that reason. What else do we have here? Heavy attack, guard break chance. So the weapons themselves, and again, it's an element of their heaviness. So the chance of heavy, if you're doing a heavy attack, you also have a chance to break enemies' guards, enemies that are parrying or blocking with shields. And right now, at half the time you do a heavy attack, if they're blocking, you could break their guard. A heavy weapon might have 90% chance, 100%, near 100% chance to break an
Yeah,
enemy's
that's
guard.
one of the aspects that we're looking at tuning a lot to see how that feels, to balance that risk and reward.
That's what I just ramped up to, Jamie. So that
Yeah,
50%, this is with an edged weapon. So this is the best edged weapon possible for guard break. So if you're using like the best axe or best hammer in the game, I think that's sitting at 80%. But there are also some enemies that have shields that will greatly reduce the chance of being guard broken. So it will back down to maybe 50% against a shielded enemy. But any enemy
right,
that
which
doesn't have a
makes those
shield,
heavy weapons a lot more useful in those
right, you
scenarios.
can take the attack to the enemy. You don't have to play block counterattack game. You can kind of swing out as soon as you feel a window where you're not going to get hit. You can swing out at any enemy, and there's a good chance that you're going to make contact.
Yeah.
And then that's going to stun them, and then you're going to be able to hit them multiple times versus them counterattacking if they block or parry, in which you'll have to then respond with your own block or parry.
Yeah. Blind Sight asks, can you use archery in combat? Right now, you can't use archery in combat. Melee combat locks you into place, but we've gone back and forth about how to make archery more of an option in combat. There's some sections where you are free roaming around an area and you have the option to sneak past enemies or engage with them. And you can choose to use your bow and arrow then to fire at enemies that don't see you yet, and as they start running up to you. And then I think it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, we talked about changing some combat scenarios to start with ranged combat sequences and ranged defensive sequences for your blocking volleys of arrows as well. So that's kind of like a it's not exactly used in combat, but there are ranged sections that are before or after combat that
Yeah,
were.
that's also something that we wanted to include. Is there's basically it's a precursor to melee combat. There's the engagement period where enemies are moving towards each other, or two fighting groups. Currently, as Jamie said, we do have sections where you can fire at the enemies or at the enemy. There's more sections where you're blocking their incoming attacks as they're advancing. So I think the idea would to add a little bit more of that pre-melee combat ranged fighting, which allows you to soften up enemies as they move forward. I also want to increase the effectiveness of the arrows. Right now, you use it a lot in hunting. You do use them to draw out enemies, so you're sneaking around, and you might want to draw out enemies by firing at them. But I do want you to probably take down a few as they're moving forward to reduce the difficulty of fighting, and that will honor the choice. If you invest money in a bow, that has a greater chance of killing enemies. I want there to be more opportunity that pays off, not just in hunting, but in softening up waves of enemies that are coming at you. So that's hopefully we'll get more of that into the game for sure.
Yeah, Ex Vorden gives a good comment that we can use to segue into this combat, asking how visceral do you intend to make the audible impacts, the pain, VO, and the gore folies? I assume the target ESRB will be around teen, but which I assume you won't be making the combat sounds extremely detailed. Let's find out. Let's fire up this combat. So just to do a quick recap, your gear here, Dave, is it higher than where most players would be at this
Yeah,
point in the game?
this is the highest level of gear you can have in the game.
Yeah.
right
Okay, so
now.
Dave's playing, taking a little bit easy, using that really good
Oh,
equipment.
Use left character
let me check
menu.
one thing too.
You need to
Game option. Game control.
Change master volume.
Let me just
Game
confirm.
select game
Oh,
difficult.
I'm playing on
Normal
hard. I'm
setting.
going to switch
The
that to
game
normal.
is set to normal. Game option.
build favor with the Fey realm before you can bring the fire.
Successful strikes and blocks build favor with the Fey realm. Once favor is gained, use right trigger to ignite flaming weapon or left trigger to release a fire shield burst.
This is sort of a tutorial-y section. That's why you got that. Oop, guy threw an axe at me. Another axe thrown. I'm going to light my sword on fire. Oh, I'm playing in the game version. I forgot
Well
about
done,
that.
Alex. You're taking your first castle.
Looks a lot more like a shallow
Here, I'm going to
cave
stop
here.
that. I forgot I was playing in the game version. It's a tutorial for firing off magic. So the enemies run away once you use your magic. So I'm going to go to the tutorial version, which will actually let them fight me continually. Let's see where that is. So tutorials, menu, let's see here. Flaming weapon, what is this?
I guess our controller input plugin didn't make it from the last changes. For our next stream, we will have a controller map up that shows what buttons are being pressed.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That is right. That's another thing we can do. Give me, demo scenes. That's what I wanted. Okay, magic demos. This is the same scene, but it actually ends. This has actually, I think the loadout that's forced in this is a mid-level loadout. I think I might have. I can double check, but
Blind Sight says they're happy with your description of the combat changes for archery, and Jarky Bacon says it's really interesting to watch the scene view while the game is running.
oh yeah,
Yeah, it is neat to get that behind the scenes view, though. I noticed I didn't see the axe come by in the scene view. Maybe I just missed that myself.
Oh yeah, they're tiny little projectiles. I think they're there. I can't do both, Jamie. I can't watch both, but I can try.
No, that's okay. It was that's.
I play the
just a
game with my
comment.
eyes closed. By the way, I find it a lot easier. So I will probably. I'm trying to kind of peek a little bit to know if there's any disasters happening. All right, I'm going to play this again. Oh, one thing I will note is we did talk to Ubisoft. Part of we won an award early on in production, and it came with some consultation with Ubisoft, and I happen to know a lot of the people there anyway. And at first I was like, oh, I worked in AAA, I know what I'm doing. But they were awesome. And the sound designers, because I'm not a sound designer, apparently you can get away with a lot of gore sound in games without tripping past teen in the ESRB ratings.
All right.
But I've stayed my hand. There's a little bit of, you'll hear it. It's a little bit more subtle than maybe I should have. I probably will amp it up a bit more for playability, so you can really hear when you're doing a crit. But you'll hear with a blunt weapon, you will hear a little bone crushing on crits. And you should hear a little bit of sinewy sounds when you're stabbing, but it's pretty subtle. But apparently, I can up it quite a bit and still avoid mature, according to Ubisoft sound designers, apparently. So we'll see how that goes.
Jarky, we'll get to that question after we show off this combat.
All right, I'm gonna hit play here. Hope this works. This time with finishing the game. All right.
I'm not sure I can stand much more of this.
There should be a place to shelter just around this outcrop ahead.
I smell smoke. Campfire.
Someone must already be there.
Oh, hell. The clansmen again.
Mara. And they're coming this way.
Use your fire. It may scare them off. This is as good a time as any to put your new powers to use, Princess. Remember, you need to build favor with the Fey realm before you can bring the fire.
Successful strikes and blocks build favor with the Fey realm. Once favor is gained, use right trigger to ignite flaming weapon or left trigger to release a fire shield burst.
I'll be replacing all that robot voice this weekend too. I'm just gonna... Oh yeah, I didn't see a projectile. Oh god, that hurt. Oh, I saw it that time.
Flame.
So at this point, there are enemies that are mixing up their attacks with quick attacks and single attacks, so sort of combo attacks and single attacks. So you have to listen.
I'm going to interrupt them now. I wasn't playing very smart. So if I can hear them doing their long attack, I want to interrupt it so I don't get potentially guard broken. One thing I realized, this tutorial doesn't have the new changes to the balancing, so I get surrounded more. Oof, that didn't feel good. Okay.
Scooters asks whatever.
Oh man. Ow. Okay, I used my area AoE attack fire to sort of clear out the dregs of these guys. I'm almost dead here too. Ugh. Oh, I died. Let's try that again. Should I try it again, Jamie?
Let's give it a second.
Okay, I'm curious.
Game
I'm
option,
probably
game
playing on
game
normal.
controls.
I'm sure I'm playing on normal,
Press the
actually.
right trigger to
But does
select
this have
game,
the timing
select game,
from a
game
few weeks ago
options
for
menu.
interrupts, or
Push
does it
down
have
on the left
No,
stick
yeah,
to cycle
it's
menu options.
because this is the tutorial. The main change I made in this level was I wanted more ability to get heavy attacks off. So I didn't allow to get surrounded by 3. So it's actually 2 at a time, and then I reduced one of the enemies because I actually found there's sort of a sweet spot where you feel like you should probably be winning, and then one more dude shows up, and it's sad when you die to him. So I reduced an enemy, and I set it so you only ever get surrounded by 2 at a time, which allows you to get more heavy attacks in. That's
Right.
not what's here. I've got surrounded by 3 guys, and I got to kill 6. So it's actually a
Game
little too tough.
difficulty settings.
Oh,
Press
my
the right trigger
constituents
to
call for me.
select an option.
I'll be
Use
right
the
back.
left stick
Scooter
to
Squirrel wants to
cycle.
know what the green volumes are in the editor, and that might be a good question to answer while I take care of this.
Oh yeah, those are waypoints for enemies advancing and then surrounding you. Oh, you know what those are? I know what those are. That's Legacy from the version where they all run away. That's where they run to. They take off if I set up my magic. But I got rid of that for the tutorial so you could actually finish the fight. Okay, I gotta play smarter. There we go.
Flame.
So flame gives me a massive crit damage bonus, which makes it really good for single combat in particular. And I'm going to use everything I got now. Oh, I should have blocked that. Okay, I can tell that was a heavy attack. Heavy. So that's a quick attack, so I can't, that's a quick attack. Heavy. Ooh, got me still. Dang it, that's not good. Oh, it's heavy. Ah! Heavy. Heavy. Heavy.
Flame.
That's 1. Oh, thank goodness. Oh no, this is the last guy shows up. This is the guy I got rid of though. Oh, this is brutal. Come on, just let me win. Okay, I got this guy. I'm gonna do heavy attacks against him, I think. Oh, darn it, blocked it. Nah. It's because I got a crappy sword. Oh, come on. Oh,
Flame.
it's blocking at a very high % chance. I wonder if he has a shield. I haven't changed the sound. There, I just set him on fire there.
So
Oh,
if
thank
he,
Well done,
hypothetically,
Alex.
if
You're
he does
taking your
have a
first
shield,
castle.
right, and you are
Looks a lot
using
more like a
not
shallow
a heavy
cave.
weapon,
It will be our
what's
castle
your
tonight.
strategy then to get
Do you think it's
through
safe
that
to
guy?
stay
Hang
If you
on,
here?
it's
only
still
have,
playing,
I
Jamie.
don't think we have a choice.
All right, there we go. Oh boy,
You
that was
gain
intense.
options menu.
Chain
Have
Oh wait,
gained
I'm gonna just go to the.
75 copper.
in coin and salvage. Main menu. Push
All right.
down. Quit game.
There we go. Sorry, Jamie. What were you saying? That was intense.
I'm saying so if you have an enemy with a shield like that, right, and you're only using the if you're not using a heavy weapon, and I think in that case you had like a 50% or lower chance to guard break an enemy with a heavy attack.
Yeah, I think this should get carried over, even though that was a tutorial, because I went and balanced the weapons. I brought their guard break chance up and their crit damage up quite a bit.
Okay.
But it's still with a what I believe that loadout would have been probably the worst sword. It's a light sword, so it's a weapon choice where you would never be using your heavy attack, or very seldom. A light sword is for block and counter attack players. So I probably had the worst thing I could have had. So the % chance of me actually guard breaking was fairly low, and I think that enemy has a fairly high chance of a bonus to parry, a stronger parry because it's a stronger enemy. So that it was sort of a perfect storm. I actually wondered because it did it at 100%. Either it's bugged, it seemed to be 100% because it should still be around maybe 40. Either I got really unlucky or it's potentially an enemy that has a shield, but I haven't actually set up the shield sounds yet, so it was making the parry sound. Anyway, I'll have to look into that. But
Right. I just mean, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, if I'd had a heavier weapon like a heavy sword or any kind of blunt item, those attacks are being parried, it would have been parried at about, or I would have been guard breaking at about 60 to 70%.
Right,
So,
but let's say you don't. Let's say you want to be playing the game with the sword and the shield.
mhm.
What's the optimal strategy for that encounter using that kind of weapon?
Oh, right. It would be block and counter. So you would be listening for swings and countering, and then you'd want to be interrupting attacks from heavy attacks still so that you don't get guard broke yourself. So
Right.
that's the general strategy. It pretty much just doesn't afford you to do a lot of heavy attacking until you get where it's still an advantage. Like if you can get a heavy attack in, the crit bonus to it is enough that I would probably be looking to block and counter with a heavy, because the window of opportunity to counterattack after blocking is short enough that you can, or long enough you can still get at least one heavy attack in. And if you get a successful heavy attack, sometimes that will also, I guess, throw an enemy into off balance, I guess, and you'll
Yeah.
get multiple hits in. So it can set up a succession of hits as well, doing a heavy attack. So
Right.
that is a strategy I tend to play, especially when you're surrounded by a lot of enemies. I tend to play it very careful, and I wouldn't
Yeah.
be using heavy attacks. That's also why this scenario, until it's one-on-one with an enemy, I wouldn't attempt to use heavy attacks
Right. And
because the risk
I
is too
like
high.
using the heavy weapons. I think it's more fun to just like crush an enemy.
Yeah.
But you have to be a lot more I guess patient or strategic with when you're going to be using those attacks in certain scenarios.
Yeah, and I think for balancing, what I've been trying to do is create, and this is just a fun balance thing too, is try to create more scenarios where you're fighting 1 and 2 enemies, as being the more typical encounter. So someone who likes to use their heavy attack, it becomes a more viable option more often. And then
Yeah.
when you're absolutely surrounded by, let's say, wolves or undead skeletons or something that that is set up to be a mob, that's when you need to light something on fire real quick and start swinging out at things quickly. But you're probably not taking too many heavy swings at things because you end up getting hit or interrupted in that.
Yeah.
Which is about the balance of play, right? You want to encourage a little bit of different play, but you want people to be playing most of the time the style that they enjoy.
Slothful Sins, thanks for the follow. Blindsight asks, is there healing and or how does healing work?
Yeah, there's no healing mechanic, but in the game, as soon as you're out of combat, you will have full health again. So it's a scenario similar to, with lack of a better idea, like a
Yeah, our healing mechanic is get good.
yeah. Yeah, and I always find healing mechanics too, or things that are add to balance difficulties where you start, certainly consumables become like a buying success sort of scenario. Healing to some extent is it prolongs combat, where death and a reset is usually what we're trying to get to, so that you get nice quick loops on combat.
Yeah,
Um,
Jarky Bacon asks, how does increasing difficulty work through the game? Sorry, I just have to let Zuko back in here.
Yeah, so there's the from I guess a progression standpoint. Actually, I'll answer the question as if you're talking about the actual difficulty settings first, in case that was what you're talking about. Which is there's easy, normal, and hard, which is a preset you can change at any time. So I kind of wanted to allow people to, if you want to be really principled about your game attempt, you can start on hard and play the whole thing on hard, or start on normal, continue normal. But if you've invested some time into the story, and you feel like, oh, this is a little too easy or a little too hard, you can change the difficulty setting anytime you want. You can also, if you get to a really challenging section, you could bring it down to get past it. That's currently our plan, is to allow the free change of difficulty setting. If the question is about progression, actually, maybe I should just ask you: was the question about progression, or was it about the difficulty settings?
I mean, if it wasn't that case, like, yeah, there are ways that I guess a player could make the game harder. You don't have to buy better equipment if you don't. I mean, I think for some one or two story parts you do, but generally speaking, you can forego a lot of the upgrades. You could choose not to use magic if you don't want to. So yeah, you could. X Vorden asks, do the new Xbox systems require you guys to recode any parts of the project?
The audio entirely.
Yeah, the whole audio engine,
Yeah.
which was a big thing, and we can probably even do a whole other stream about our audio. Slothful Sins asks, will you potentially add a story mode that doesn't require any gameplay and the player can enjoy it as an audiobook? So Dave would probably love to do that. It's a thing that you talk about all the time, and we love other games that do that. I think you mentioned Mass Effect comes up a lot.
The
And
game that this is modeled after for that is probably Witcher and Uncharted. Although, by the way, the Witcher story only mode may end up being a little bit more like ours. It's actually it can be hard, strangely enough. It's themed as a story only mode, but you still need to fight enemies, and they just set the enemy difficulty so low that it's you don't have to do any of the crafting or upgrading. You could pretty much go through the story without getting any upgrades. That's currently our plan for story only mode, which is ultimately an easy mode. I know Naughty Dog had instant headshots to handle their story only mode, which I think is a little bit more like that. You do a lot of the gameplay. Maybe the platforming puzzle stuff is still provides that challenge, but the combat is very easy in that case, and that's more of what we're going for, I think.
yeah, I know that you were asking, like, will the player be able to enjoy it as an audiobook? I think specifically that probably not. One of the big things behind developing the Veil as we got more and more into development was making an experience that was equitably accessible for or equitably enjoyable for people who were in the blind and visually impaired community and really invested in audio games before the Veil and really wanted a more robust experience, but also we really wanted to make a point to have the game be interesting, and when I say accessible, I don't mean in this case from a like sighted or visually impaired standpoint, but accessible as just a video game from a gamer standpoint, for people who haven't played video games before. A lot of our play testing with the Canadian National Institute for the Blind had us involved with people who had never held a game controller, or people who didn't even think that video games were an applicable medium for them, because generally speaking, they're so focused on sighted experiences. So it's really important for us that we still, at the end of the day, have a game that people can play, even if that game is really easy and you're killing everything in 1 or 2 hits. It's still important that people can pick up a controller or go on their keyboard and actually go through the process of playing and interacting with the game.
Quite a bit of the narrative comes out in the combat as well. So there's also that idea that, and that's I mean, I think this is what why Naughty Dog has their all audio. All audio. What am I saying? Although they have made an accessible game in Last of Us 2. But they do a lot of their storytelling and character development during gameplay. So if you were to cut through that to um, uh, dialogue scenes, you'd actually be losing quite a bit of the story. And there's a bit of that in our game too. So it wouldn't be as easy to do that. The only reason it's a major consideration is its accessibility on other platforms, something like on a Google Home or Alexa or Siri. The idea of we have been Amazon, I think, reached out at one point about looking for games like this for their platform. So we have the content, and this is also philosophically kind of the part of the point is how can you, if you create content that costs you money and time and thought in creating this story, why wouldn't you bring it to as many places as you could? Because it's not just an accessibility issue; it's a reach issue. So if there are people that would like your content or starve for content, let's say on a voice activated platform like Alexa, then I would look to move it there. Similarly, I look at a game like The Witcher, and they have a what they call, I guess, story only mode. But what would it take to take all that content, the millions of dollars they put into just the storytelling side of it, not even the visual side of it, the music and the voicing? Could that be could a version or a port of that game be made that could be completely accessible? Mind you, after seeing what Naughty Dog did with Last of Us 2, it's all radar based. It takes you out of the experience a little bit, but it's about as good as I've ever seen a game be accessible, and truly accessible. Like you can play every aspect of that game, combat included. It's very hard in sections, but it is 100%, at least from my assessment, accessible. And from our my friends and advisors in the community, it's something that's pretty groundbreaking from their perspective as well.
Yeah. Blindside asks, what is your favorite enemy?
Oh, in my game?
In your game?
Or we just start talking about
games. What is your favorite enemy?
Darth Vader. My favorite enemy. I like. Oh, I know what I like. There's we use this mechanic for a few enemies, some of the supernatural ones. But I like. There's an enemy you fight in a street fight scenario. You go to this town, and there's street fighting, and you can have Alex, the main character, totally optionally start joining a street fighting scenario where she works her way up. And the second guy you fight is a super quick enemy that jumps from side to side.
Yeah.
And you have to listen to where he's going before you try to interrupt or block him. So it's not just about a timing, it's also directional, which I find quite enjoyable. There's something satisfying about hitting this guy that's always popping around and moving. And it really gets the most out of the binaural aspect of the game. The moving around is very atmospheric because it's all sort of timing, and the directionality is like pretty obvious. But this one is where you really have to listen to it, and you have to listen to details in his movement, his footsteps, not his screaming or anything. He's also a very quiet enemy, and he attacks quickly. So I think because of how much I like him, I think there's probably going to be a little more of ninja-like characters that require more listening. And the only thing is I introduce him during a alley fight that's quite loud. So there was a lot of balancing work we had to do to make it work. And I think I'd like to take that a step further and have an enemy that's even quieter in a quieter setting. So it's a much more intimate fighting experience where you're listening to his breath is what you're keying off on rather than the tells on the yelling. Which is kind of a convention of a lot of other games like this one. And I've kind of pulled that back and combined as much of that as I could or mixed it up as much as I could. So it isn't just about whack-a-mole screaming characters. There's quite a bit of nuance as the game unfolds. But you still get the feeling of a lot of combat. And they're actually, the Raiders are an example of a pretty screamy enemy. They're kind of Scottish Highlander Raiders. So I don't know, I thought they would scream. So they do a lot of those heavy attacks, whereas other enemies get a little more subtle as the game goes on. I also like the undead are kind of pretty unsettlingly creepy. And I think an all audio game, without making it a big deal, because I know there's a lot of horror elements in these games because it's so tempting to have because you're so immersed and it's so intimate to add the horror element. We have small moments of this, which I think are pretty effective as well. Yeah, actually, I'm not good at doing streaming things like reading and, Jamie, you do it right. You read a thing out loud, right, and then you comment on it. Actually, there was something. I don't know if I've totally abandoned this idea of. At one point, I think I was going to have an assassination attempt on the character, where you're essentially going to fight assassins, ninja type characters. And there are aspects of you being stealthy as well and sneaking up on enemies, where the reward is, in some cases, it's isolating an enemy you want to get to without stirring up the hive. That's one of the gameplay scenarios. It's actually one we could kind of play if we wanted to. There's a hunting scenario. Actually, is it hunting? No, I think you got to go through a field of there's these things called nether wolves, these supernatural large creatures, and they're basically eating dead bodies, and you've got to kind of move through them. But you can also use it. Your options in fighting these guys are you can kind of find a safe-ish place to be, center on one, and kind of pick it off with bows and arrows to sort of basically kill it before it gets to you if you can fire far enough away from it. Or you can pretty much walk up to one, and then the worst thing you could do is stir a group of them. So there's a little bit of selection in the way you handle enemy camps in that way, wolves in that way. So it does have that kind of assassination, sort of assassin feel, that you move around and kind of surgically do the work. There's a scenario at the very end of the game where there's undead around you, and if you can avoid triggering the swarms of undead to get to the target that's raising them, that's sort of an aspect of stealth. I think in that one you can also get out your bow and try to progress the fight by taking them out remotely. It gives away some story points. I probably shouldn't have talked about it because I can't show it. There's very little I can do because it's like I say a bunch of important things.
But yeah,
I can do. We can do some the nether wolves. That's actually, I put a version of this in the demo where you can hunt dangerous animals from afar. We could play that if we wanted to. I don't know. Do you know which one I'm talking about, Jamie?
No.
I think I have it. I think, again, I haven't been testing these demos. Let's see. It's called Open Combat, I think.
I remember
actually this is cool because now you can see what this looks like. Okay, so anybody who's watching the screen,
if you've joined us recently, again, you'll want to be putting on a pair of headphones to get the binaural audio experience here.
So this is a tutorial section. Often in the game, I'll have a beacon you're trying to get to. It'll be like, let's get to the waterfall, or let's get to Alex can hear these supernatural items, and she can navigate her way through stuff. So it gives you the agency to, you know what, I want to fight everything in this room. So I can just walk around and one by one attack all these. Each one, there's basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these giant wolves eating bodies, which you can hear chewing away. So they're an item you can, an object you can hear. You can run up to them and trigger melee combat. You can line them up in your sights and fire arrows at them and provoke them to come at you. I think in this scenario, some of them are tethered together. They're close enough where you'll get 2 of them attacking you. I don't know if I set that up. But there's no beacon in this scenario. So this is just you going around clearing off these wolves, because this is, again, an open combat demo. In other scenarios, you have the option of completely sneaking around them to get to your objective if you don't feel like fighting.
Thanks for the follow there, Angelfish 2020.
All right, so I'm going to give this a shot, see if this still works. I think I've got some weird robot-y voice setup stuff at the beginning for choosing weapons as well.
Hunt down netherwolves with bow or blade.
Oh, nope, I don't. Let me make sure I've got a decent weapon on me. So all right, so let's walk around here. I'm going to sneak. It's easier for me to hear stuff too. Okay, so I hear... Oh yeah, these are the new controls. You can strafe now in the game, so you can walk sideways and you can turn. It's basically standard first-person shooter controls. We had these tank controls initially, which were not well received, and we changed that. Okay, he's a little bit to my right. Let's line this dude up. Oh, he's right ahead. Let's see if I get him. Oh, he didn't like that. I'm going to see if I can take him out.
One's coming for us.
Oh, well, here we go. Oh, there's 2 of them coming. Oh, I got one. I killed the one. And now the other guy's coming. Oh, now he's forced me to draw my sword by coming into melee contact with me. That's nice. They're supernatural, so that's how they die, doing that weird sound. Alright, let's kill a couple more here. Sneak.
So could you sneak around the middle one and fight the one on the behind them?
Yeah, I could. By the way sneaking works, I have leather armor on right now, so I have a very small... anybody who's looking at the screen here, I've got like a small sound zone here, and then there's close and far sound zones or awareness zones around the enemies. These enemies I set up to have very small awareness zones, so they're really not hard to sneak around. This is more for a level for you to go up and decide to take them out. So essentially, if I tiptoe, sneak, then my sneak zone can see, it made a noise to say that it was aware of me, but it won't attack me as long as I'm sneaking.
So there's overlapping circles, or what the characters and enemies are represented by.
So,
and is it the set that there's, because they're represented by 2 circles, like the outer circle and the inner circle? Is that how it works?
Yeah, so the inner circle right now, if it doesn't matter what I'm wearing, if my sound zone goes into their inner circle, they'll attack me. Usually, most enemies will have a very small, it's basically walking right into them is the red, and they'll have a wide green area. So as soon as you get into the awareness zone, you'll hear them make a noise. Somebody who's in a camp will go, "Did you hear something?" Enemies like these wolves will make a sort of sound, like they're kind of looking around, they'll stop eating. So you kind of have some feedback as to whether or not they're aware of you, but they won't attack. As long as I'm doing 2 things. Tiptoeing or walking slowly, or running for a very short period of time. So if I think it's within a half a second. If I accidentally run a little bit, no problem if I stop. But and then I can sneak the whole way. As soon as my sound zone overlaps their innermost awareness zone, again, it doesn't matter what I'm wearing, they'll attack me. So I shall do this. I'm going to walk right up to this guy. So even though I'm sneaking, he's going to become aware of me right there. And here he comes. He doesn't charge in because he's too close to charge in. He kind of walks up. Oh, these guys also aren't super hard on their own. They usually attack in packs. What's wrong with me? Let me just try this again. Oh, that's better. I think I have a newer version of these guys. Oh no, it was the bear I changed. They jump to the side, but they don't attack right away. I think I kind of like that mechanic though. There's a sort of undead bears that fight you. They're for some reason more nimble than regular bears, and they do this attack where they jump to your side and attack right away, and they're pretty deadly. I kind of like that for these enemies as well, because you would think a wolf would be more agile than a bear. All right, actually, let's take this guy with the bow. See if I can take him out before he gets to me.
X Vorden asks, "Are you guys willing to reveal any more about Alex's brother?" Probably not.
It's like the main part of the story. All right, take this guy out.
Weapon ready, Alex.
Oh. So I must have got a crit on that with the bow. So that's where the advantage of having a better bow starts helping. You can start taking enemies out before they get to you. And again, in most of the game scenarios, you'll stir up a hive. So if I hit one, it'll growl, come at me, and usually one or two will come at me. In this case, I don't think I have as much of that.
Is there a different crit noise for ranged attacks?
There technically is. I didn't hear a big distinction, but it might also because I've limited sounds for this enemy. Humans are very obvious. They make sort of annoyed noises when they're not crit and very severe. I think for arrow awareness, I think I actually said anytime you hit it with an arrow, they play the crit noise just because I had a hard time picturing somebody casually taking an arrow in the shoulder.
Just it could graze you.
Yeah, I guess so. It's more they do become aware of arrows, and they specifically call out to arrow awareness. If you shoot an arrow through their awareness zone, they'll say, "Where was that?" and they'll start looking for you, and then they have a timer for how quickly they can find you, where you can try to shoot more arrows at them. It's more realized when fighting human enemies because you get a lot better. Sorry, go ahead, Jamie.
But the crit noise then is based on like the enemy's reaction, like it is with the human enemies. You hear tones.
Yeah, there's a sound difference.
Yelp is louder.
Yeah, there's a sound for the impact itself. It makes the sound of cutting deeper, I guess.
Yeah,
it's probably more subtle than it should be. I probably should.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, and I'm one thing that we kind of go back. We want to make.
Sorry, Jamie.
You can. Oh, sorry.
It's I don't. The way it's audio is balanced for me anyway. There's no one anyone's going to hear you while I'm fighting wolves.
Main menu.
All right.
Push down.
That was that. All right. Sorry, Jamie. Yes.
It's okay. The way we've gone about the design philosophy for a lot of the game is trying to make as much of the experience as diegetic as possible.
Yeah.
Meaning that there are as few interactions as we can removed from the narrative of the game. You're not going through menus so much as you are having conversations with people and things like that. But and that's why the critical effects, the audio signifiers for crits, are the enemies reacting differently. But I'm wondering, as Dave mentions, that it probably should be less subtle. Do you guys think it would be understandable if there was in addition to those enemy feedback noises, if there was like a critical tone, or if there was one specific noise that would indicate to the player, hey, that was a critical attack,
like a non-diegetic sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or would that take away from like the kind
that's a really good question to get feedback on. It's my instincts is make it in world, but push it as much as we can. But I think people can suspend their disbelief through a lot of aspects of game convention. So I think it's a fair
revealed a
question.
little bit this during the stream that there are, there's magic, there is the fae, there are more like ethereal, occult aspects of the game. So you could still have, and for those who've played the demos, Alex is a little is precognitive the right word? Not really. Oh, is it? Yeah.
I think it might be. She
Yeah.
foresees things and has into like she has an innate ability to see the future, glimpse of the future. It's
Yeah. Yeah,
basically a
that's precognition.
mechanic for
Yeah.
death. Yeah, precognition.
So it wouldn't be entirely out of the
Mm-hmm.
ordinary of the story to have Alex hear a noise that other people didn't hear.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think well, actually we do it already because when you although it's weird the way it's set up right now, I don't. I believe you can shorten your wind up on your heavy attack, and it's still effectively a heavy attack. Which you start doing as you're trying to rush your heavy attack. It naturally works. And currently, if you pull back the sword to charge up your heavy attack, it does make a sound that is like a gleaming sword sound, which of course is not. It feels like appropriate, but it's certainly not what you would really hear when you're holding your sword aloft. You don't hear ring. So that is currently an indicator for charge up completion. The only weird thing about it right now is you can shorten that so you don't hear it and still effectively do the attack. So that's something that I'll probably want to fix for one. But I'm pretty sure it's still in the game. I guess I could try this right now. So this is an example of that, I guess.
Carl B210 says you can have the character make a different grunt, use a more aggressive sword or other weapon sound, or even have companions make
Hunt down
comments in
netherwolves
appropriate
with bow or
situations when
blade.
landing criticals.
It
I
actually-
would love that last one. That's
That
so
that
cool.
one's in a lot of stuff already, just near the end of the game. Here, let me just try one thing real quick. Oh no, I gotta get a melee combat first, darn it. Okay, let's just walk around really loud. Okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm not gonna rely on the screen here. Where's this dude? Oh, there he is. He's aware of me. Okay, there he comes. I'm gonna block his charge. Alright. That ring. Alright, so that's an example. That little swing is the charge up sound. But anyway, that's an example of something you do with crit. What was the question again, Jamie?
But that doesn't guarantee. That just means your heavy attacks charge. It doesn't mean that you're critting because you still have the percentage chance to crit.
Oh no! I was just saying that's an example of a non-diegetic sound that we've added to the game that kind of feels appropriate, even though it's not a real sound of a sword. Your swords don't charge up.
Yeah, something like that would be cool for crits. X Vorden with a hard-hitting question here. On a lore basis, since you're using your weapon to channel the Fey realm, is it implied in the story that Alex doesn't use any iron? The Tuatha De Danann and their courts are very anti-iron.
Interesting. Yeah, didn't take that into consideration.
Yeah, let me just do a quick Google search there. Just
nice.
Rapidly Googled that.
I'm also going to assume
Irish
that there's
mythology.
Yeah, I was going to say the Fae. The use of the word Fae actually stretches a few. There's a sort of a reappropriation of Fae, which is usually how I'm using the word Fae, and it can be spelled in a couple different ways too. But yeah, I was not going all out Irish on this. I was using it as a word that I kind of like for the other world or supernatural. In this case.
So that's going to be probably not. No, definitely iron is used. Alex definitely
I think
is
it's
limited with her options at the onset of the game.
Yeah, well, it's funny because we did. My wife and I were writing a screenplay for a story about fairies and fairy in the Irish sense. So beings, not little floaty things with wings that are quite mischievous and dangerous. And I believe that is part of the lore. Is if you want to keep them out of your house, you put spoons or knives at your windows and all the entries points, because I believe because of the iron. So I'm assuming that's where that comes from.
You're somewhat in the know, is what you're
A little bit,
saying.
yeah, someone in the know. But then I just used fake because I like the word in this case, for the record.
Busted.
Yeah. But there was something we were talking about, the non-diegetic sounds of crits, or something else I thought somebody asked. That was interesting, and I was going to answer it, but I was concentrating on killing things at the time.
Somebody asked more about Alex's brother.
Oh yeah, no,
Ex
but it
Gordon
was
as well.
I
Yeah.
feel like it was a story thing that I wasn't going to expand on the brother. Because that's another thing about the game too, and in that I think initially I'd envisioned it being a little bit more open, trying to push the boundaries of what don't we see a lot of in a game without any visuals, and it's like there's open choice, and there's also a when you're building less visual worlds and spending less money doing that kind of work, it's like, oh, maybe we can make this story more branching. But I think I started really liking the story I was creating, and that's the biggest risk or hope I'm taking, is that people will appreciate the story and appreciate that I have been a little more linear than maybe I had anticipated, because I think it's important the story is not too sidetracked by possible chance or tangential sort of narrative branches or something like that. So there's a little bit of branching into areas, but there is I'm hoping a fairly rewarding payoff the way the game goes. It also makes it a game that's difficult to beta test with somebody who don't want to spoil the game for them. We are relying, if I hadn't said this before, I'm like, this is the team right here, pretty much. I have a programmer.
Oh, that's what somebody asked. Somebody asked how many full-time employees are making this
One
game. You're
who's not
looking
even full
at
time
one.
right now. It's me. I'm working on the weekends, finishing the game. I was working full time on the game up until what should have been the end, before the shutdown in Toronto because of COVID. And now I'm on other projects, so I'm finishing this on the weekends as we get our final bit of audio done. But I do have quite a bit of support from a programmer who I'm also working in another game with, which hopefully will also have some accessibility connected to it as well eventually. At least it's my plan. But it's all secretive stuff that I'm working on. We are super reliant, because we only have one or two machines we're playing this game on. I will need people to. I want to get to the point where the game can be fully enjoyed with maybe some bugs, but I want to get rid of most, if not all, the robot voice, so that I can get a beta test sweep on it to get a balancing feedback. Just like, again, we have one system, two chips. Like, that's a big risk if you're going to throw it out there without getting 10 or 20 people to play the game and just say, yep, it works on the ADM chips. It works on, because goodness knows what could go wrong. So I'll need a handful of people who are willing to not play the perfect game in its entirety to tell me it works.
Yeah, and still have everything kind of spoiled.
Yeah.
Which I imagine there's probably quite a few people who would be really excited and willing to do.
Yeah, and it's at the point now that people are still, like, the people that are playing it internally are still liking the story, that they didn't like. There was elements that I hadn't told them in particular about, which they did find interesting and rewarding and exciting from a purely narrative standpoint. So I feel like it's got good bones narrative
Yeah, we're
wise.
super biased, but it is a pretty good story.
Very biased. But anyway, it's part of what's become very important to me about the game, and I'm hoping that people will appreciate that. That we don't have a pet system, but we have like a dog that you can befriend.
You can pet the dog.
You can pet the dog.
Blindsight asks if the game does well, are you going to make another game in the same universe with more RPG elements?
Yeah. Did I say that before? Because I feel like I said, I feel like, my gosh, I say that all the time.
I think we talked about it recently. One thing that I would really like to make, and it could be based off of this. I guess I'm not too particular into that part, but to have a similar engine and make PvP, player versus player combat in it, would be a lot of fun and really cool. And I think you could really expand that to a lot of different things. Like you could have asymmetrical player versus player combat. You could have it
Mm-hmm.
in teams. You could have a different but still equitable experiences for sighted players and players that are playing without any visuals. So you could have different roles based on whether or not you're choosing to have the visual experience or not, but you're still equitably contributing to the type of the or to the gameplay in a meaningful manner.
Yeah, all that.
All that.
But no, I would, yeah, if this goes well, I will probably be shifting from um, continuing with the current projects I'm working on, where I'm trying to bring accessibility to those as well. But well, I would come back to this in a heartbeat to continue in this world. I mean, there was one a thought I had where I'd be like, oh, I've told a relatively contained story with a main character in a world I like, so that's why I would come back to this world. I don't think I would come back to single player or sorry single character RPG. I think I would really like to come back to this world where you have a choice of creating a character. For one, the main character is blind in this, which is part of the setup and part of the explanation for all sorts of aspects of the all audio experience. But it certainly does not have to be that way. I know it's a trope with games made in the audio, especially by sighted developers. It's a bit of a trope to make a game with a blind character. I liked this idea of creating a character whose empowerment was based on their blindness and not in the sort of what's his name, a daredevil sort of like has almost a magic ability in being blind and being able to hear. It was simply being able to play a character that's comfortable walking around in a crowded space without seeing things, which to me is so there's an element of being transportive for a sighted person to play an experience where you have confidence in that situation. To me, was kind of exciting. That people who've been living with blindness their entire lives, they obviously get very, very good at navigating spaces with confidence. And that's immediately what this character does, and it affords them sort of an interesting perspective. Anyway, that's kind of what
Yeah.
I got excited about in creating an experience that was interesting to me, but it's also a trope. And my first thing would be to, again, allow you to create a character that has any kind of background that you want, at least within the game world, and I guess ideally, it might even be a visual game that has all this accessibility that we've worked on pulled into it. So you can play a character that's sighted, a character that's blind, and it could potentially change aspects of the way you play the game in the purest form. Like you could actually play a character that's blind and you lose the visuals in the game, or you play a character that's sighted and you have the visuals. And then if you would have accessibility baked into that character's ability to play that character, so you could play a sighted character but still play it without visuals, because it has all the accessibility built in. So kind of meta, I guess, but at the same time, it just was exciting to me to be able to create to role play in a way that takes role playing a step further in terms of who your character
Maslow,
is.
sorry, Dave.
Yeah, yeah.
Maslow 1964 says, "Is the stream still going? I don't hear anything."
Oh no,
Let's.
that doesn't sound good.
I don't hear anything. Anybody else having that problem?
Oh good. Oh good. We're here.
We're here. Okay, good. Yeah, Maslow, that might be a thing on your end. Make sure you can get volume out of maybe other internet sites or other tabs. Check your speakers, etc. Oh, we've got a bunch of questions here. Carl B asks, how long will the game take to complete? About 8 hours ish. If you want to go back and play again on hard mode, or if you want to play some story sections to make the choice that you didn't make in the first playthrough, it might take you a little bit longer. But I think around 8
Yeah,
is where we're at now.
recent playthroughs. I think Lukash, who played it, he's a great guy from Prague who is on our internal team now. He played it in about 8 hours and really took his time with it, but didn't play everything, so he wasn't going complete completionist. So there's probably a little bit of headroom to a careful playthrough. But I think I know people have been able to play it in 5, kind of beelining it. I think if you do the absolute bare minimum of play and discovery, you could probably play it in about 4 hours, maybe 4.5.
If you're
That's borderline speed
difficulty
run. Like,
2, yeah,
yeah,
maybe.
you're pretty much end to end. You'd also have to
Looking
know,
forward to the speed run for this game.
yeah. The menus might be frustrating for a speedrunner.
You
Just to
can skip
consider.
past a lot of them
Yeah,
pretty
actually,
quickly, I
yeah.
think. But Axe Warden says he'd love a prequel, or they'd love a prequel game that explore Alex's uncle's story, assuming there's enough lore in the history for such a development. Well, you might find that you get more and more of that story as you play through the Veil. So hopefully
Oh
that
yeah,
scratches that
that's
itch. There's quite
yep.
a bit.
Um,
Um,
yeah.
and then follows up saying what David's talking about is exactly why I would love to see a prequel involving Alex's uncle, and confirming for Maslow that yeah, everything is still working audio
Actually,
wise.
one thing I've always wanted to do with a sequel, not that I've had an opportunity to make, well, very shortly, without saying anything in particular, I'll be able to launch a sequel of some type. But the idea of creating a really interesting character that people like in a world people like, but then retiring that character into the world lore, and then sort of starting anew with
The
a
good
new.
old Metal Gear Solid
It,
2
I
approach.
guess although I know people didn't love that for certain reasons.
Oh yeah, you would know that approach really
Yeah.
intimately well, wouldn't you?
No,
Did you
well,
work on Twin
no, I
Snakes,
didn't. I was
or
out. I
you
was out.
joined just
I
after?
joined later. Yeah, but
Oh,
it was a
okay.
team that worked on I think the Xbox, or I almost said
Twin Snakes
Switch.
was GameCube.
GameCube. Thank you. GameCube port of that, but which is really a completely different game. But yeah, I don't know. There's something I like about it is because especially if you end up wrapping up a story in a way that feels like, I don't know. As a writer, sometimes it's like you're pushed out. You're pushed to like continue the story of a beloved character, but I'd almost like to sidestep that and bring them into the lore. The main reason I want to do that in this, for this game in particular, is I kind of want you to have player choice. Like I want character creation in the next game set in this world. That's a very personal thing to me because I love creating characters and then creating a world. And again, if it's an all audio game, I'll hopefully be able to afford this. Is creating a world that responds to your character choice in the least superficial way possible, taking it maybe a step further than Mass Effect does. Games that where you create a character or a backstory that feels like it's, yeah, has a lot of meaning to the world you're playing in. I mean, there's a lot of games that are doing this fairly well, but I wanted to see how far I could take that personally, which means retiring Alex for a period of time, and then maybe having something come up where I'm doing that again. I don't know. We'll see. It also depends on what people like about the game. Not just liking the game, but what people want to see as well is a big part of the decision making, especially in a scenario where I could go in so many different directions and I like them all. If it's PvP, we do PvP maybe.
Yeah, I still want team-based, fully accessible, giant combining robot game.
Oh, Jamie,
Yeah, that's the long haul for me.
has someone made that yet? I know you and
Someone
your,
has not made a game, to my knowledge. Stream, feel free to
like
blow up my world here.
Voltron,
Yeah, where
like,
you
okay,
are, you each play as like one part of a, yeah,
you play as the
Voltron-esque or
hand,
like Power Rangers-esque robot, and yeah, you might just be the left arm or
right?
something.
Is it physics based, like Gang Beasts, sort of like
How I would want to do it.
unwieldy robot walking
Yeah. So
around?
the design document I have for that, that's pretty old at this point, is it's partially physics based, particularly the combination. The gameplay has different sequences. So you start out as your separate robots, but then when you have to combine, it's a like physics based Tetris esque first person puzzle where you are figuring out how to fit yourselves together, and you might just mess it up and have like a very lopsided robot
Oh, it's
that you have
actually.
to
Do you
deal
have to then
with.
play with that robot?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah. That's the second half of I guess the core gameplay
Why
loop
wasn't
is
that?
you.
Why isn't that made, Jamie? Why'd you?
Let's see how we do it
Okay.
with this one.
We'll see what the demand is. I'm only slightly making fun of you, Jamie, because I feel like there will be a demand from some group somewhere.
Yeah, I feel like there will be. Maybe not the same people who want the medieval experience of the veil and the
Maybe not. Oh, that's what I was going to say. My other open thought was there is a lot of cool sounds in sci-fi. I'm also working on another game that's science fiction based, and I'm like, wow, would this be as good an experience, or would there be a novelty to taking this to a science fiction place for the soundscapes alone? I feel very comfortable writing and working in this medieval fantasy genre, so I'm perfectly cool with staying there. But I would be interested to see if people felt. I know a lot of questions that come up is like, would you do a Daredevil game or something like that?
Marvel, we would. It's just if
Yeah,
Disney,
yes. If anybody's representing,
we would.
if anyone's working for Disney, let us know. But that has come up with a lot of the interviews as well. And I was actually a pretty big fan of at least the TV series and all the spinoffs of the Devil's Kitchen. Devil's Kitchen? What is it called?
Hell's Kitchen.
Hell's Kitchen. That's it. I don't know where I was going. But I guess Defenders, is that what it's based on? I think it is.
There's a whole thing. That'll become a whole other stream.
Yeah, the Defenders. Anyway, it's having a game set, contemporary superhero game, would not be a stretch either. So, but I think I'd be sooner. Personally, if I had a choice, I'd go back probably to this world and expand on it. Should people like that idea? Should we show something else? Should I fight some? I don't think we fight any undead in it. Like, I feel like I can go to a couple undead levels that don't have a lot of story
stuff. Yeah.
Let's go. Let's try this one. Okay. Let's see.
Can you set it up at all for our viewers?
Yeah. So right now, this is a section of the game. Again, it's heavily narrative dependent. Aside from the fact that you can find a dog that travels with you for a section of the game, you can. There's other companions that come and go. The shepherd who you meet at the very beginning is someone you have throughout the game. But there's other people with other. They don't really factor into combat, at least not yet. There's some timing-based stuff that happens with this magic-using character that teaches you how to use magic later on. But anyway, the point is that there's companions that come and go, and in this section you are traveling with, I believe, an old man who's the husband of this old.
It's an old man.
Yeah, it's an old. So all I need to say is an old man. So it's an old man who's really interested.
Less talk, more fight. Scooter Squirrel says, "Less talk, more fight. Fight lots of monsters."
Okay, here we go. Yeah, there's an old guy that's with you, and you're in a creepy place. He does not get out much, so he's not happy about being here.
Let's oblige your viewers.
So let's see here. Should I do the story setup part? Yeah, I'll start at the story bit.
Ooh, exclusive, never before heard.
This is
What's
exclusive.
this gonna be?
Is this the lake one? Yes, this is the lake, and this doesn't give much away, at least. Yeah, we'll give this a shot. See what happens. See if this runs. I think it will. I'm going to be very quiet.
It's difficult to say what this structure was like. You can tell the stone was quarried elsewhere. Would have been some operation to get it up here.
I see an opening. There's a passage down.
The witch won't forgive me if we don't take a look.
I'll go in. I can already hear something.
We're right here with you.
Oh, I want to wear something quieter. There we go. I didn't like the plate armor.
The water is not deep. You should be fine to continue, Alex. Oh, that startled me.
What is it?
A corpse. It's been here a while. Nothing but bone and scraps of leather.
There are more over here, in armor.
Could this be a crypt?
No. I believe they died here, in combat.
How?
There's your answer. A guardian. In pieces now.
The warriors prevailed, then.
Not if Alex can still hear the artifact they were after.
The sound is coming from right here, just below the water.
Go ahead, Alex. I don't believe the Guardian will bother us now.
Push the left stick in the direction of the sound.
Feels like a necklace.
Alex?
It happened again.
What do you feel?
I can feel it in my left hand. What's that sound?
The water is stirring.
Oh, the dead.
It would appear the Fae can bring life to more than just statues.
Oh, I switched to too good a weapon. I'm gonna kill them too quickly. I switched to an endgame weapon. Mid-game fight. But I wanted magic. Oh well. There, I toasted them.
Never again, Alex. That was truly horrifying.
You have proven yourself worthy once again.
Who is she proving herself to? Huh?
That's the real question, isn't it?
Dun, 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 dun.
You now
Oh, I'll just stop that. All right, that was undead. That was a little too easy because I switched to my best weapons for fun. Right now, I have the hotkeys. The highest to get magic, I have to switch to the highest loadout. So it ends up killing things pretty quickly. But anyway,
X Warden says, assuming the higher tier of the weapon, the faster you can build up your magic attacks.
oh yeah, weapon tier doesn't affect it. There's a skill tree. It's a very rudimentary one where you can invest in the power output of individual attacks. The two that you have are a flaming sword where you have focused increased crit chance on your sword to strike out at enemies versus a AoE attack that attacks hits all the enemies in your range and then also stuns them for a period of time that you can then do follow-up attacks on them. So
but
those are the
also we were talking a little while ago about making some equipment adjustments, and one of the things that came up was with shields, having shields that, with shielding in general, being
Mhm.
able to time your blocks so that you'd be rewarded for blocking closer to when an enemy attacks. And just because it would give the player more engagement with that mechanic, because there's a lot of blocking.
Yeah, that's
and
actually
one of the ones that we talked about is making a shield that if you're timing your blocks well, you increase the rate at which you gain magic for your magic meter.
Yeah. So currently, that's something you can control from every time you find there's these two objects. There's these rifts that you close that absorbs energy that you can put towards the different output attack elements, and then there's these figurines that are from the Fey realm, which you can absorb the magic from, and that allows you to increase the build-up speed of magic through successful strikes or successful blocks. So you can, if you're choosing more like counter strike sort of combat strategy, you can actually invest more in picking up stuff with blocking. And then the idea was that there'd be a mechanic that allowed you to thrust out your shield in a timed manner that would afford a bonus of some sort should you block at the exact moment of impact or something. Could also be a way of increasing your mana buildup quicker as a reward for these perfectly timed blocks. But yeah, that's something that's on the table. I think where I'm sitting with it right now is we have enough complexity that I don't want to overwhelm people too much with it. But I think if it can safely fit in as an optional thing, I think that's what you're pitching, Jamie. Is it's an optional reward you can get. People that do play and can play this well to be doing that will have a benefit. There's also a system issue with detecting when the shield is coming up because you tend to swing it around, and it might actually be quite hard to code. Is my bigger concern because it's a bit of a house of cards. The combat system in terms of like breaking things very easily when we change stuff. So that would be my other concern, the purely production concern.
Yeah,
But
we'll
it's
see.
definitely something we would do in the next game for sure. I love that. That's the thing you always say. The next game, Jamie. The next game. But yeah, no, these things we'll probably re-examine this stuff at some point. It might not be that hard to do too. I got to figure it out.
Fingers crossed. Next Warden wrote and then redacted a small part about Power Rangers, which I'm really happy about. Clearly, there is some interest.
There's some interest. That's right.
Even if it's a redacted interest, that's fine.
I have some. I'm actually it is my birthday weekend, and I told my family.
Happy birthday!
Yeah, no, well, thank you. It's actually in 2 days, but because I'll be preparing for something on Wednesday, I will not be having fun tomorrow and Monday, which is my birthday. So I'm going to be leaving in about 15 minutes, or we'll end the stream then, so I can go and enjoy that part of my day. But it's a lot of fun. I like this. Let's do this again, Jamie.
Yeah, we're definitely this was great. I'd love to do this again. If you guys have any suggestions as to like what you'd want us to focus on more in our next stream, what you'd want to see more of, less of, let us know.
Less me going on some weird tangent about.
If you're not here for our tangents, guys, and
yeah, then what are you here for?
Yeah.
I just feel like I think we covered everything. I have these little notes, like because I'm an old man apparently, and I made like a streaming agenda. It's like, what do we need to cover? How do I fill dead space? But I think we covered a lot of the stuff. I did want to let people give them some update into the fact that we're still waiting on voiceover, but the game is getting to the point where it is launchable relatively soon. And when I say relatively, I mean, what did we say? During warm weather?
Yeah, that's what we're about. While the weather's
warm. Sort of our new commitment.
I guess just some quick housekeeping things. Definitely follow us on Facebook or Twitter. Wishlist us on Steam or the itch.io equivalent is add it to your collection, I'm pretty sure. And we'll have news about more that kind of really spoiler heavy beta test in the coming weeks if you guys want to get involved in that. So keep an eye out to our social media channels. I feel like we didn't really talk about it too much. I know that there was a pretty lengthy thread on audiogames.net a long time ago at this point when we were talking about our controls and we had issues with our controls for the last playtest that we did. We did totally rework the control system, both behind the scenes and then also the actual method that you have to control the game is a little different. We can talk about that more on another stream, but I just wanted to make sure people know that.
Anybody playing the new who hasn't played in a while, you'll notice that it's first-person shooter controls where even on the keyboard, and that was actually a big thing as I talked to a lot of people that play audio games with keyboard, and they said that this is something that is relatively widely done now, where you have WASD control and arrow control at the same time. So you're turning on the arrows and you're strafing on A and D, and you're forward and back on W and S, which matches the controller nicely. Whereas before we kind of had tank controls. So I haven't had a problem controlling the game with the new setup, and it's a little bit more intuitive. I'm hoping people will like it.
Carl B says adding more complexity is usually not a bad thing if it's optional.
It's
And
optional,
doesn't
yeah.
penalize the player too much for not using it. It gives the player something to work
Yep.
toward and challenge themselves with after they've mastered the basics. Yeah, that's we totally agree.
Yep.
Just hopefully we can actually code it in there. X Vorden says really loved the stream. It's always great to get behind the scenes conversations with devs. Appreciate the time you guys took out of your day to communicate with those of us who are eagerly awaiting the fruits of your efforts.
Cool.
Enjoy the rest of your weekend and happy early birthday, David.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, that's so nice.
I feel like
Yeah,
I
thank you
fished
so
for
much,
that. I fished for
everybody.
the birthday wishes.
Yeah, you're a monster. No,
Yeah.
it was great. Thanks for coming out. We'll definitely do this again sooner as opposed to later. This was lots of fun. Great to have everybody here. And stay tuned for more information. Thanks, and have a good weekend, everybody.
Yep. Thank you, everybody. Awesome. Bye.